Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Monday, October 21st, 2024. I'm your host, George Kurt, joined by the other class of the NFC East. That's Marcus, the fantasy godfather himself. How's it feel sitting on the top of the NFC East so far into the season?
It's feeling pretty good, George. I mean, a little bit of a scary week for us, but thankfully we played a team that doesn't look like it belongs in the NFL right now. So get another win this week, couple more winnable games upcoming, and looks like between my Commanders and your Eagles, we'll have a fun run down at the end of the season here to see who comes out on top.
First matchup coming in a couple of weeks, and then another one coming near the end of the season will be very interesting for that NFC East race. But we're going to talk the whole NFL, highlighting what happened in week 7 and talking the Monday night games that are coming up. Make sure you comment or DM us with your questions and follow us at the Couch GMs, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Reminder, we are live Monday and Thursdays at 6:30, so make sure you come check us out to ask your questions live. But in the meantime, Marcus, why don't we sit back, relax, and chat? Wild week 7, a whole lot to talk about. Like you and I said before the show, more than we can fit on this show. So we're going to just try to hit as many things as we can.
This would be an easy week to get off on a 4-hour tangent. So, yeah, I agree.
We're going to try to stick to as close to an hour as we can. We're probably going to go over a little bit, but we can't go over too much because there's an 8 o'clock game, not an 8:15 tonight. So got to get off the air before that goes. Do you want to just start with injuries? Is that where we want to start here?
I guess we kind of have to. It's been the theme of this season.
It just literally has.
Every week. And if you have not been bitten by the injury bug yet, you should be knocking on wood, skipping cracks, whatever, superstitious thing you have, wearing the same underwear till the end of the season. Sorry, girlfriends and wives that are out there, that we just put that idea out there for the guys. But I mean, this week bit me. It's every week. Like I said, you're holding your breath because we've definitely had a string of some crazy injuries this year. It's odd that we talk about an injury being a good thing, but we may have that. And I never want to wish for anyone to get hurt, but it looks like the Watson experiment in Cleveland may be finally done. Watson torn Achilles out for the season. And dare I say it, does this actually benefit Cleveland and maybe give them more of a semblance of a real NFL offense? We saw Watson get hurt last year, and their platoon hodgepodge of quarterbacks that they marched out there, eventually under Flacco led them to the playoffs. So you assume it's going to be Jameis Winston now. Does this make anybody in Cleveland viable? Are you going out and grabbing Jerry Jeudy or, maybe a Cedric Tillman?
I don't know if I would go as far as Cedric Tillman. I've always been a Jerry Jeudy guy, so I really was hoping you would lead this off by I would maybe at least keep an eye out, maybe put a speculative ad if you have an extra bench spot for a Jerry Jeudy. Just take a look, because I do think Jameis Winston benefits him, and he's now wide receiver 1 because they traded Amari Cooper. But my biggest boosts on it, Nick Chubb, who just came back, scored a touchdown. I mean, we can't expect a whole lot out of him. He's going to ramp back up, but he looks good. And I think that's a great, if you went out there and stashed him in the draft, great job by you. And then I think David Njoku has a chance to be back in that tight end bucket again.
I do like Njoku. And, if you didn't watch that game unless you're a Cleveland fan, I don't know why you are watching that game. Nick Chubb actually had 2 touchdowns in that game. One was called back because the guard lined up offsides. I don't even know how a right guard can line up offsides, but
pass the ball, not
apparently. So
I can't say I've heard that one before. Good job.
Right guard offsides. Lined up offsides, or it would have been 2 touchdowns in his return back to action. And look, hats off. And I'm still not sold on Nick Chubb, but just the fact that he played again and looked okay. There was a little bit of rust there, but that that injury last year had a lot of us wondering if, we'd ever really see the same Nick Chubb back. So hopefully he does get back, because Nick Chubb is a great player for the NFL, a great character guy, very great player for the city of Cleveland, because they definitely need something there to be positive about. Looking at other quarterbacks, my team had a very scary moment, which has been my concern in Washington all along. And honestly, this might have been a good thing for Washington. So first off, Jaden Daniels, in the first play, I actually think this happened. They say they don't know when. I actually think this happened literally on the first play of the game. He scrambled for 45, 47 yards roughly. And the way he went down, it does look like the defender kind of falls on his back. And it was weird. I actually was a little bit worried that he might have twisted a knee or something underneath. If I had to take a guess in that first series, I think that's where whatever this injury is, and they're not really saying yet. They're saying it's a rib injury.
It sounds like a bruised rib or something like that.
Yeah, it could be separation of cartilage. There's a lot of different things. I really do think it's going to just be a pain tolerance thing. So we'll see how soon he's back. But the interesting thing was, I get it was Carolina, and Carolina's defense is atrocious this year, but Washington really didn't skip a beat with Marcus Mariota. And an interesting thing was brought up in the course of that game. Mariota in the NFL never really had an offense that was what he thrived in college. And under Cliff Kingsbury, this is more of what he saw in college. So as much as I did not like the signing in the beginning of the year, and, I was looking at the Mariota of the NFL, who really hasn't done a whole lot, looked just kind of be this like scrambler journeyman quarterback. This could fit for him. And maybe it kind of put to rest the idea that Washington was just about Jaden Daniels. This is a team that really is buying into the whole thing there. And the other aspect with Washington is, dare I say it, this defense is starting to come together a little quicker than I thought they would. I'd still love to see them make a trade and go after maybe a key piece to help. But, our coaching staff really seems to be putting some team aspect together, which, God, I can't tell you how long it's been since we've had that in Washington.
I want to throw hats off to the Washington fan base also. Just like, peeking into that game and seeing how he gets basically a standing ovation when he's coming back out of the locker room, giving the wave, saying like, I'm okay. Like, obviously he was out of the game, but I haven't seen that out of Washington in so long. So it's nice to see like, that passion and that like we could have something here in Washington for the first time in a while. And
we've been desperate for it.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, I'll be honest, we've been desperate for it.
Yeah.
And you bring that up about him coming back out. If you are a Jaden Daniels owner, and I do own him in a lot of leagues, feel confident that if there is an absence, if he doesn't play this week, I do believe they're calling it week to week right now, which I don't love, but I would feel confident this is going to be a short absence if there is an absence at all. I think he didn't come back into this game because he didn't have to. Plain and simple. Washington had control of that game. There was no reason to force him back into action by halftime. They knew that. His mom, who is also serves as his agent, has come out and said he's fine. Like you said, he's on the sidelines. He's raising his arms up for the touchdown. He's clapping. He was seen hugging the owner and some different players, Bryce Young, who he's very good friends with, after the game. If you have a bad rib injury, you are not doing these things.
No.
In no way, shape, or form. You are sitting there, you're keeping your arms in one position. Trust me, breathing hurts when you have a bad rib injury. So hopefully, let's chop it up that he got lucky on this one. But it goes to show the concern of his viability moving forward. He's a small framed guy. These hits that he's going to take in the NFL, he's got to realize it. On that run, that was great that he was making that run. Get the hell out of bounds.
Yep.
So
he is built more like Lamar Jackson, who has done a much better job as of late of dodging a tackle and getting down or getting out of bounds than he did early in his career, and not as much like a Jalen Hurts or a Cam Newton, who are bigger bodies that can take a couple more blows. But even they have had issues with injuries, taking some of those hits at times. So it's going to be a interesting thing to see how he progresses and see if he does it better than Anthony Richardson has, who came back to
Correct.
play this week, which was fun. But no, I hope everything's fine there. Selfishly, as an NFL fan, I hope he's back next week to have that Daniels versus Caleb Williams game as they play the Bears next week.
I'd
But
like to see that too.
at the worst, I mean, they have the Giants in 2 weeks, and then after that, the schedule starts to ramp back up for them. So we'll see what happens after that. Where else are we at here?
Other injuries, because there's more.
Oh, yeah.
Another scare, Seattle. DK Metcalf had a great day. Fortunately, probably could have been a little bit better. Went out with a knee injury. Looks like, again, we've scathed away from a major injury. They're calling it a grade 1 MCL sprain. Again, using the terminology week to week. According to DK Metcalf, he claims he could have come back into that game if needed.
That's DK Metcalf for you, though.
But
He's
yes,
that
that's
kind of
DK
guy.
Metcalf. So
grade
again,
1 makes it sound better to me.
Correct. And again, I guess it's going to be a shorter absence, you would hope. But again, you have to watch these injuries. And as we were talking about before, now that the NFL does not give you probable, all you have to do is miss practice. It doesn't matter what the reasoning is. You get a questionable tag. It makes it a lot harder for us fans to decipher who's really hurt, who's on a Veterans Day arrest, who stubbed their toe and just doesn't feel like practicing today. So you're really going to have to kind of monitor what his participation is in practice leading up and listen to the team sources. And of course, hear the couch GMs on Thursday when you guys go live as to whether or not he's playing or not. Another player who also had a very, very scary looking injury. And I have him on one of my teams and thought, oh, that's done for the season. And then he came back into play. Hats off to Montgomery from the Detroit Lions. That is an NFL football player right there, because that injury looked bad, and then he came in and still played. So
and played well.
Yes.
Man,
what did you say? You were saying, what did Dan Campbell say it was?
He's fine. And then he said something about like it's a bruise right above his knee or something like that.
Or near the
it's
knee.
Like, or near the knee. Like this guy looked like he could have been out for this season. And then Dan Campbell just goes, he's fine. He's got a bruise by his knee. Like, what? No.
I know they're in our conference, and I wasn't I didn't watch Hard Knocks or anything like that, but I have to just say, I love the way Dan Campbell handles his team. Mm-hmm. I absolutely love him as a coach. I love he may be the only coach that just does not give a rat's when it comes to the political or the proper coach speak. And I love that. It's so refreshing.
It really is. And he's not afraid to go for it in key situations. Didn't he go for a 4th down at his own like 30-yard line this week?
No, he tried. He actually, They had a delay of game. That saved them. They tried to do a fake punt on their own 30-yard line on the opening drive. So talk about ballsy. But they actually had to delay a game and then actually kicked it away. But they tried to pull off the old fake punt in their own zone to start the game. So it's definitely not boring when you watch Detroit play. That's for sure.
It's not. And just to dive into this game a little bit, because as every time that you thought Detroit had it in their hands, Minnesota just kept clawing back. And absolute props to the Minnesota Vikings and Sam Darnold. They are a force to be reckoned with this season. They finally got their first loss at the hands of Detroit, who you could argue is the best team in the NFC. And it stinks they're in the same division. So one of these teams is going to have a wild card berth. But these two teams have played so well. And I'm glad they get to play again in the regular season, let alone maybe in the playoffs.
I'll give a counterpoint to this, and I do agree with you. Minnesota's look fantastic, but I do believe this was a tale of two games. And if you saw, like you said, Minnesota came, calling back. There was a really good player that saw in Minnesota that maybe we forgot about, or I'm sorry, we haven't forgot about, but apparently it seemed like Sam Darnold and the coaching staff forgot about in the early part of the game was Justin Jefferson.
Fair.
Justin Jefferson was barely targeted. It was barely even, it didn't even look like he was involved in the game plan to start the game. Justin Jefferson visibly upset on the sideline. It was clear as day coming out of halftime that there must have been things said in that locker room, because on the next drive, it was the Justin Jefferson, Sam Darnold show. It was target, 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 ended up with the touchdown. But then it's baffling to me, George, because they kind of went away from him again. And I've said this a lot of times. Sometimes I really do think these coaches, they outcoach themselves. They try and be the smartest person in the room. They try and reinvent the wheel, or we're gonna surprise you, or do the thing you're listening. You don't need to. When you have players like Justin Jefferson, there's these alphas exist for a reason. You paid him the way you did for a reason. Your offense 100% should be funneled through him. I'm not saying that he gets the ball every single time, but there's a reason why you have these players on your team. And it's not for them to be a decoy.
If you ask my opinion, you're 100% right. And the only other person who should get a bulk of touches is obviously Aaron Jones. They're the
Right now,
clear-cut two best players
Yep.
on that team. And Aaron Jones was the spotlight of this game, but I did not get Justin Jefferson involved enough in the pass game. And funny enough, like the second most productive receiver wasn't even Jordan Addison. Like you would make an argument of, oh, if they're bracketing and triple covering Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison's probably the guy that's getting the Jalen Naylor outperformed Jordan Addison. So maybe it is something to do with the coaching staff and the game plan kind of thinking too hard. And you can do that in one, a divisional game, and two, a game against a quality opponent. It might have just been that.
Yeah. It's going to be curious with TJ Hawkinson, which, by the way, his window is open.
His window's near closing, actually,
correct.
if I'm not mistaken.
I think
he's going to have to be
hunch.
activated this week,
Yeah.
but he might not play.
I think he'll be activated this week. Like you said, now whether or not he plays or not, but he's close to being back. It'll be interesting when he does come back, because I do think Naylor is more of the more polished, complete receiver. And I think you're seeing that. Addison is definitely still that home run threat that can take the top off and be used. But I think it really is going to come down. You have to understand the defenses that the Minnesota Vikings are facing in order to take advantage of that secondary option. And when TJ Hawkinson comes back, as long as he's healthy and 100%, which obviously we're going to have to see on the field, it'll be interesting to see, because he logically, you would think, is going to become the number 2 option there to Justin Jefferson. So whether or not Addison or Naylor would be viable, even as a flex or a streaming play, is really going to be up in the air. I do like Naylor, though. I think he has a home here in deeper leagues and dynasty leagues. He's definitely worth a stash. Especially, and you saw it earlier in the year, if Addison goes down, or God forbid Justin Jefferson goes down, it's not like it's a void of talent.
Exactly, like it might have been in the past. So
yeah,
there's some staying power in Minnesota. I'm interested to see how they stay up through the rest of the year, because obviously we can have as much faith in Sam Darnold as we want, but the name's still Sam Darnold. So we're still going to be questioning, like, is this fake or not, until we get deeper into the season. But those two teams really fun right now.
Yes.
Not
everybody was so lucky, though, on injuries, as we've been talking about.
No. So I think we have a deep dive into Chiefs 49ers here. We have a bunch of different things to talk about here. I'll start with Brandon Ayuk, who you see him go down on the field, and I was questioning if he got a concussion or got the wind knocked out of him. And all of a sudden you watch the replay, and I'm like, that's an ugly knee injury. Torn ACL, torn MCL, out for the season. He signs the contract, plays 6 weeks, and unfortunately, that's all done.
Yeah.
They were also without Deebo Samuel, who played a sprinkle of plays, and then he was out with an illness. Like, it's not a long-term thing, but he didn't play this week.
We had a problem with that this whole week.
Yeah, there were a couple.
The weird illness bug. But yeah, no, you're right. They had really much of nothing in that game.
Jawan Jennings was out of that game as well with a different injury. They had people catching the ball. There was some Cowser guy, I believe his name was. People I hadn't even heard of for the most part. Ricky Pearsall was active. That was really good to see.
Pearsall, and wasn't the guy with Bell? Bell, I think, was their leading target guy.
Now, is that the
next to
David Bell
Kittle.
guy that used to be on the Browns?
No. This Robbie Bell. We're talking a no name.
So
An
when you're
absolute no
talking to
name.
Marcus, especially, and anyone out there who doesn't know Marcus as well as I do, when you're even getting Marcus on some of these names, it's deep on the depth chart.
We're down the depth chart. Yes, we are way down the depth chart there. Now, the interesting thing though, let's kind of talk about that though, because we have always said with the 49ers that the 49ers, it doesn't matter who it is. It just matters that they are the focal point of that offense. So, we'll get a little bit more into this with waivers, but do we obviously you assume Deebo Samuel is going to be back this week.
Yeah.
You still have George Kittle there, but you're going to have to start to look at some of these other options because again, you think the 49ers are going to be that deep, that deep team, and talking about going deep into the reserves, Juju Smith-Schuster, the Kansas City Chiefs already have lost multiple players this year. Hollywood Brown, Rashee Rice. Now Juju Smith-Schuster is out, at least in the short term. Not only was he ruled out in this game, but he's already been ruled out for week 8. So who's the next man up, George? Because we're not at Kittle time yet. He's still more focused on Taylor, and we're not close enough to the playoffs yet for him to decide he wants to play. Or I'm sorry, not Kittle, Kelsey.
Apologies for my dog there. Xavier Worthy has to be the guy, I would think.
You would think.
But like I feel like he's kind of a one-trick pony at this point in his career. That's the problem.
Dare I say it? Do we finally see Sky Moore? The guy who's been taught.
No, I'm just kidding.
Correct. The guy who's been touted by fantasy analysts on all different shows, had such high hopes for him, and then just kind of fell out of favor, kind of faded away. Do we see him? I mean, it's him and Watson. Justin Watson,
I mean, who's kind of been there forever and been that middling guy. Yeah, but so it's interesting too, because not only are we talking about all these receiver injuries and going this far down the depth chart, we're talking about the 49ers, who maybe have had a harder time navigating it. Let's be real, they're 3-4 right now. Yep. And then we're talking about the Kansas City Chiefs, who are the only undefeated team left in the NFL. And we just talked about all these receivers that are going down. We've talked about Mahomes not playing well throughout the last few weeks, and it's still like he's not really impressing me that much. Kelsey hasn't even been producing that much. Correct. I don't even understand how they're playing good ball at this point.
So,
and here they are.
If I may, George, can I rant for a second?
Go for it.
To all the other NFL teams out there, there is a reason that I am wearing my Commanders baseball jersey today. See, there was this thing in baseball. I was a catcher for years, and when teams disrespected you, and George, I know you understand where I'm going with this. The next inning came up, you put a fastball in the middle of somebody's back. Yep. There was an incredible play that's being highlighted over and over again of Patrick Mahomes going near the sideline and cutting back in. And there is this aura of Patrick Mahomes of being the savior of the NFL or the golden child. Enough is enough. I'm sorry, but if I'm a defensive player in the NFL right now, the next time that Mr. Mahomes tries to do this, I'm going out. No, I'm not going out. I'm lighting him up. I don't care if I'm getting thrown out of the game. I don't care if I'm getting fined. I don't care if I'm getting suspended, because it sends a message. It sends a message to the Kansas City Chiefs that we're not going to wear kid gloves anymore around you. We're not scared of you. And you brought it up perfectly, George. This team is not playing great. Hell, I would dare to ask, I'd love to poll the people who follow your show, how many of them aren't even starting Patrick Mahomes anymore? Because
most shouldn't be.
And it's not that Patrick Mahomes is a bad quarterback. Patrick Mahomes isn't a great fantasy quarterback. And the downside to it is one of these weeks, and it could have been this week, there was a couple of penalties, things that didn't go his way, drop balls. He's going to go off for 3-4 touchdowns, whatever. Again, not saying that, but it's not like he has, he's outside the top 12 right now. He's not a tier 1 QB. Now, again, very different world between fantasy and actual football. But you see it. You see it when he plays. Every time he throws an incompletion, I swear it's, they're looking for fouls. There's a reason why everyone says it's the Chiefs and the referees and the official. It's not that. I'm watching it. I'm watching it every week. These teams come in there, and I think they already feel like they're going to lose. They feel like there's this aura, this magic about the Chiefs. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. I looked at the schedule. They may have 2 tough games the rest of the way. I think they play Houston and they play Buffalo. The rest of the games, they should absolutely mop the floor with them. Now, given you have a bunch of divisional games in there, they can go either way. But
do you really think Vegas is going to win a game against them right now?
They could. Honestly, I wouldn't put it past them. Keep in mind, they beat Baltimore.
Fair. But that was also pre-Adams and everything else. I think the Chargers have a chance to beat them in a game. The Chargers are a solid team. But
look, I will say any given Sunday in NFL, any team can beat any team. And I'll say that based on watching my Commanders have crappy teams knock off the Steelers, who were undefeated, knock off the Philadelphia Eagles the one year, who were undefeated. Literally, I'm not saying that to dig. Sorry, George, maybe a little.
No, I only attended that game. It was painful. It's fine.
Oh, you were there? Oh, great. But no, I'm just saying, though, any given Sunday, a team can win. But I feel like these teams are going in against the Chiefs walking on eggshells. They just automatically assume that Mahomes is going to make this miraculous play. Just hit him. Take the damn penalty. Make him start to think about, make him start to feel footsteps. I'm not saying be dirty about it. I'm talking just plant the guy in the ground. If he's close to the sideline, whale him out of bounds. If you get the penalty because he's a step out of bounds, then so be it. I guarantee you the next time he's not going to think about cutting it back in. He's going to run right out of bounds, though.
I would love to see it too, because I do feel like teams walk on eggshells against the Chiefs, which is funny because most of the time you have this team who's a Super Bowl contender or just coming off a Super Bowl, and you're like, everyone's going to give them that 110% every time they play them because they want to beat the best. And correct. I feel like that doesn't become the case against the Chiefs, at least when I'm watching these games. I really have hopes that Buffalo will give them their best because, Josh Allen has been, unable to do it for how long. And I hope Houston gives them their best because Houston's an up-and-coming team that's trying to beat the big dog and show that they're one of the big dogs themselves. But
I think Houston's week 17, the light teams.
What was that?
I think Houston's week 17, though.
So at that point, the Chiefs could be cruising anyway, and then the Texans will also more than likely be cruising. They might already have a division locked up at that point, but we don't know.
So, I mean, I'm just going to say, look, enough is it. Teams are acting. I get the impression that and you hear people saying it. I hear people talking about the Chiefs are winning 3. The Chiefs, who's stopping the Kansas City Chiefs right now? Go out and stop them. You're all NFL players. There are other good teams. Someone go out and punch the team in the mouth. That's all you got to do. Because right now they're allowing the Chiefs to basically have their way with them. And that's why the Chiefs are winning these games. The only team that came close to it was in week 1 against the Ravens. And let's face it, the Ravens missed beating them by a toe.
And I think a Chiefs-Ravens rematch is probably our best shot at seeing if a team can knock them off. Like, as much as I talk up Buffalo, they're not as good of a team as they have been. They're still going to beat the bad teams. They're going to struggle against some of the good teams. Like the Ravens handled them pretty easy. I don't think that was, entirely what's going to happen every time. But Houston's still an up-and-coming team. Cincinnati was the other team we thought was going to be a big contender. They're still struggling.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to be a contender or not this year even. Like the AFC went from this juggernaut to I'm kind of concerned for some of their second-rate teams.
Hey, we'll get to that because I had a question posed about that, so we'll have a little bit of fun a little bit later in the show.
Cool.
Actually, got some breaking news coming across the wire right now. We were talking about Christian McCaffrey potentially coming back.
Mm-hmm.
So Kyle Shanahan at his press conference today has said that he believes it's a long shot that CMC is back this week, but they do expect him back after the bye. So we were talking about whether or not if it would be this week or they wait till after the bye to week 10. It looks like it's going to be week 10.
That is what I expected when I saw there was a week 8 bye. I think it was CMC owners trying to speak into existence a week 8 return. Um, why don't we hold off on our discussion, especially because I would love to have you back at some point in the next week and a half, about our CMC and how his viability going forward is going to be. So we'll hold off on that one for a little bit of a second here.
And I do have a second bit of breaking news for you. Not necessarily good news. With San Francisco, Deebo Samuel has been hospitalized with pneumonia and fluid in his lungs, so there is no timeline for his return. So, yeah, when we get into talking about waivers here, you are potentially looking at the top 2, maybe 3 if Jennings is not back, wide receiver targets not being available in San Francisco now for the upcoming week. Now, again, you assume after the bye he'll be back, but this week is looking a little dicey for us. Sunday Night Football against the Cowboys, correct?
Yeah, I believe so. And of course, it being a primetime game.
Yeah.
Here we are. Try to go out there if you are a Deebo Samuel owner and get one of those handcuffs just to protect yourself.
And if you have George Kittle, fire him up. Although he came out of that game with a sprained foot too. I don't know if you saw that. They're saying he's day to day, but
I mean,
I expect
he'll beat up at this point. I think they have the post Super Bowl bug of like, hey, we played a lot last season, and a lot of teams get banged up after they have all those extra reps. Even the Chiefs are dealing with that right now. It's just they're handling it better. So it's going to be a slog for them to get to a playoff spot at this point. And if they do, we have to see if they're healthy enough to actually, make a run at the end. One more piece of breaking news.
Yeah.
You might know this name. Tyler Snyder says the Titans can't beat anyone.
Hey, what's up, Tyler? Hope you're enjoying north of the border. Hey.
The amount of jokes I made about and tables this weekend to him, I thought you'd appreciate. But
so that's the question, Tyler. You got to answer in the chat. Did you go through a table?
And if you didn't, why didn't you?
We'll see. I'm sure he'll answer at some point.
Yep. One fan question before we keep moving on, if you don't mind jumping that in here. We got, hey guys, I know this is a week 8 question, but I can't decide. I have the 49ers defense versus the Cowboys, the Chiefs versus the Raiders, the Lions versus the Titans. Any thoughts on your favorite streaming defense for next week there?
For me, I'm sorry, Tyler. I'm going the Lions versus the Titans.
I would also say Lions versus the Titans as well there.
I mean, don't get me wrong. To me, it's a 1A, 1B, Titans being 1A, Chiefs being 1B against the Raiders. But again, there's something weird with the Raiders and the Chiefs. That just never seems to be an easy game for them. And I know the Chiefs are bad, but there were times last year that I expected the Chiefs to just absolutely punt and, mail it in for the year. And that, they came out and, put up a hell of a struggle. So, first and foremost, I'm going Detroit. I know they lost Hutchinson. Man, that's a big blow. But I still think against, the Titans, who whether or not they'll have Will Levis back, whether or not they stay with Mason as the quarterback.
I would argue if Levis is back, it might be better.
Correct. But keep in mind, Ridley went down in this game. So he's dealing with a little bit of an injury now. DeAndre Hopkins has been MIA. I think the Titans are struggling right now to really figure out what exactly their identity is, and the injuries don't help there. And as one of the OG Couch GMs said, Tyler in his comment there, the Titans can't beat anybody. I think it's a tough week for them, and I would go Detroit here.
Update from him. He did not go through a table, and it is an insane the amount of alcohol that Bills fans can drink, which neither of those things shock me. I'm just disappointed about the first part.
Tyler, I am married to a Bills fan, and I can 100% agree with you. It's amazing the amount of alcohol they can drink.
Let's get back on track. Why don't we here? Let's go down to Miami instead of up north of the border. And we'll talk about Tua, who they opened his practice window. say what you want about concussions and if he should play or not. Let's try to leave it off.
Okay.
He has the past concussion protocol, but it seems like he's done with all the symptoms. He's going to be on track to play. What do you think as an owner of any Miami Dolphins? Because there's different ways to look at this. Like, it should be a boost, yes. Are you skeptical of the longevity? Are you just, gonna buy right back in and hope it's fine? What do you think?
Well, if I am a Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle owner, I am salivating for this.
I can attest.
Because, yeah, let's just be honest. What they rolled out there was not good. And the offense just never seemed to really get going in any way, shape, or form. And really, we say Waddle and Hill. The reality of it was it affected the running backs. The entire offense just looked in shambles. Everything was disheveled. Nothing seemed right. I mean, you even had the OBJ there this week, and that didn't help. Not that I ever expected OBJ to really make a big difference there, but he was active. I don't know. And again, we want to stay away from the concussion thing here, but I mean, this is the best thing I can attest to this. You remember the old Mike Tyson's Punch Out? You remember that game?
Yep, I do.
Glass Joe, the guy with the glass jaw. Like, I feel like that's Tua now. You never know when one hit is going to completely change the trajectory of the Dolphins. And that's a rough way to go through the season, or depending. You hope that they can dig themselves out. There's absolutely nobody else in the division besides the Bills. The Jets don't seem to be going anywhere. We'll get to them in a little bit. And New England might be one of they're vying for the number 1 overall pick. So, can they make a run? Sure. I mean, we've seen what that offense can do. I don't know that the offense holds together.
They are they're throwing rocks at a glass house. That was what I was trying to look for. And maybe it'll work out for them, but I'm concerned too. I'm just hoping it lasts as the Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle owner, and even Devon Achane owners out there are hoping that it lasts as well, because he's been mediocre at best without Tua in there to keep that offense moving. Some trade rumors that I think have been very interesting, because I didn't see this one coming, but it makes sense. Rumors out there that the Rams are shopping Cooper Kupp.
I often wonder sometimes with these rumors, George, like, are the Rams really shopping Cooper Kupp, or is it people calling? Because we've heard that teams are calling. I mean, teams called the Jets about Garrett Wilson, which would make no sense whatsoever for them to move him. But you know what I mean? Like, so I think there's a lot of maybe, media speculation and fan speculation in this day and age. But you're absolutely right. Would it make sense? Yeah. If I'm the Rams and I can, depending what I can get back for them, you have an aging wide receiver. The window. Does any of us, do we really think the Rams are going to make a Super Bowl run here this year, next year? I mean, they're a rebuilding team. They already have sent off a number of their key players. They sent Ernest Jones Jr., the Tennessee Titans, because they weren't going to pay him. You saw Aaron Donald retire, and it was like that's what it kind of reminded me of. Aaron Donald retired, and it was like, oh, okay, we're done.
My argument against it, though, is just you're sitting there with Matt Stafford. And I know Stafford's an aging quarterback, and he won his Super Bowl. And now you can, is he in kind of, cruise control at this point? But, I could not envision Matt Stafford going through a complete rebuild. But I think if you're trading Cooper Kupp, you're basically committing to this is a full rebuild. And by the time you come out of it, there's a good chance Stafford isn't viable. So Stafford would be part of it then.
Correct. But then that's the question, though. Is Stafford part of it? I don't have his age in front of me, but I mean, Matt Stafford is up there in age too, to the point where we've questioned and wondered whether or not he was going to keep playing.
36. So, I mean,
Yeah,
when it comes to longevity of quarterbacks, like, obviously you can play longer, but you'd think probably the max for him is around 40. You're probably gonna get the best of him that's left in the next year or 2, and then after that, it's gonna be, the shell of himself, the Aaron Rodgers syndrome, like.
correct. Well, that's my point, though. So does Stafford just continue? Maybe he mentors a rookie quarterback next year. Are we at that window for him? You draft the
It
quarterback, he comes in, he plays behind Stafford next year, and then, halfway through the year, it gets turned over to him, and he's the backup for the rest of his contract. And then he goes off into the sunset and does broadcasting or whatever, coaching. But I just, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't think he's at the forefront. I think there's other options that are going to get moved. I absolutely think, Mike Williams from the Jets, that's more logical. DeAndre Hopkins, possibly from the Tennessee Titans.
Mhm.
You have teams that are in need of wide receiver help. So it wouldn't surprise me to see some of those pieces possibly get moved. You have some other options that are out there. The questions come into play about running backs.
Yep.
Do we see a running back get moved here? What does Dallas do? This is an interesting situation because Dallas does not look good on every level right now. They have no
Mhm.
running game. CD Lamb does not look like the CD Lamb of last year. Dak Prescott, I, I don't even know. I don't even know how to describe it. It's not like he is a bad quarterback, but he does not look like he's an elite quarterback. You have all kinds of uncertainty here. You have Jerry Jones going on a radio show that apparently a station that he owns or has control over. And when they ask him a tough question, he threatens their jobs. Like, you
I
know, don't get me wrong. And I'm sure you'll agree as an Eagles fan, I love it. I love watching the Dallas Cowboys, the BS self-proclaimed America's team, burn. Watching, that stadium just literally burn to the ground and everything inside of it. Um,
and
I
that's what
just
makes me kinda think that they're not going to make a move.
correct.
Even though
Oh,
making a move for a running back makes sense, and I have to
it
think
would
that there's
help.
some guys out there that could be available. Maybe the price tags will be steeper at some places than others, but, like, ETN's an interesting case right now, but they have Tank Bigsby down there. You gotta think there might be a price tag they could pull ETN out of Jacksonville. What else was I thinking here? New Orleans, they're 2-5. They have 2 solid teams in their division. Alvin Kamara is aging. Alvin Kamara would make a lot of sense in Dallas. Never gonna happen, I don't think. But like things like there's big moves to be made, and there's even smaller moves to be made that I think would still move the needle that I just don't see them doing because they've given me no indication that they are even remotely trying anything right now.
Yeah. What if, here's an option too. What if you're the Cardinals and you lose tonight? Does James Conner become available?
I
Again,
would
it's
think you would.
interesting, it, kind of seeing how the next week or two plays out. And if you have some teams that start to drop off, do they
Mhm.
become available? So, but I mean, we could beat this. This is all speculation. It's going to be fun. I definitely think you're going to see some more trades. We'll leave it at that.
Yes.
Um, as
Um,
we still have a couple of games to talk about. One being last night's reunion between Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, and the Steelers starting one Russell Wilson back in the fray. And let me tell you, I don't care who's angry about this. I play flag football on Sundays, and I had a really crappy flag football game. I threw a bunch of interceptions, but that doesn't mean I don't make good throws. And frankly, that's what I am, the version of Aaron Rodgers at the NFL level. Like, and I say that because, like, Rodgers looks bad. Yeah, he can still make good throws from time to time, but I'm an old guy. I'm an old guy playing flag football on Sundays with guys that are half my age. And that's what Aaron Rodgers looks like right now. He looks like an old guy playing in the NFL. His throws are not, the timing is off there. It's not there. The Magic is gone. I mean, you put the old band back together in Green Bay. I'm sorry. When was the last Green Bay Super Bowl?
Sorry, I'm kind of distracted at the moment.
Oh, is Cody yelling at me because I'm trashing Aaron Rodgers?
No, I changed your name.
Oh, flag football. I love it. Oh, I love it. Oh, flag football, Aaron. Oh, that's great.
Anyway,
No,
what was your question?
great.
I'm sorry.
No, throw it off. No, I'm saying, when was Green Bay last relevant? You're putting together the old Green Bay Packers. Yeah, like, I mean, it was bad. And look, I'm not saying that it doesn't get better. It's 1 week. I'm sure Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams will build more chemistry. I just don't know that that's going to solve the problems of this team. I honestly think this, more than anything, is coaching. This offensive line should not be as bad as it is. And newsflash, it was a crappy offensive line last year. They went out and spent a ton of money, a ton of draft capital. It's still bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go back to Washington here. Washington had some pieces on its team last year on the offensive line that looked like garbage. And guess what? We may have the best offensive line in the league right now. 3 of those starting positions are the same. Why? It's coaching. It's scheme. That's the problem here. And I posed the question to you and Cody in a private message between us. When this fails, and I do feel undoubtedly, I think this does fail at some point in time, who is to blame? Is it Aaron Rodgers for demanding the team that he wants? Is it the ownership? You said to me, you still feel it's the GM and ownership for letting it happen.
Yeah, because you had to know, because there were so many meetings coming out of pre-trade for Aaron Rodgers that you had to know that he had demands X, Y, and Z, and you were going to fit demands X, Y, and Z. Obvious by the fact that they signed Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb right off the bat. Like, that was part of his package. Like, you're signing me, we're doing a contract extension, and then all of a sudden we're signing X, Y, Z. Like, if you are a GM, I get it. Aaron Rodgers was probably your best shot when you looked at it. Like, we don't have a quarterback. We have a decent young team. Let's go out there and try to make that move. But if it doesn't work, it's not Aaron Rodgers' fault for going out there and trying to do what he believed in. It's your fault for not overriding him and saying, no, as a GM, this is a better move. As a GM, this is a better move. And if Aaron Rodgers can't play ball without his posse, how good is he still?
So that's my point. Like I said, it's an old man playing a young man's game out there. That's just the way it looks. I'm sorry, Aaron. I know your discount double check and all this, you go into your cave and you eat your mushrooms and it told you to come back and play or whatever. The mushrooms lied to you, Aaron. That's the reality of it. It's not the same player that we saw years ago, winning MVPs. And it reminds me of back in the early Dan Snyder era. Not that there was ever a good part of that era, but when he decided he was going to try and skip the process of building a winner, which he was never able to do, but he tried to buy it. And he signed players like Bruce Smith, Deion Sanders, way past his prime, to these ridiculously expensive contracts. And it just burned. It failed miserably. And I feel like that's what's happening here. Devontae Adams looks much slower than he was 2-3 years ago. Aaron Rodgers looks old, and he doesn't seem to be the player, the gunslinger that just made things happen. And I'm sorry, Jets fans, but Fireman Ed, if you watching, it ain't going to get any better. And the sad part about it is it'll be fool's gold because they do have a very winnable stretch coming up here. A lot of games that they should win that, unfortunately, I don't think is going to really yield real results down the line. I still think they'll be a beatable team. I still think they'll be a very flawed team. And the only thing that they could be doing right now is just keep handing the ball to Breece Hall and mix in Braden Allen, because that might be their best bet.
Upcoming schedule for the Jets. New England should be a win. Houston on a Thursday. I mean, that's probably a loss, but Arizona's winnable. Indy is winnable, and then bye week. So,
and on the other side of that game, as we kind of head into waivers here, Russell Wilson gets his start, looks half decent. Definitely a stat line that I'm used to seeing from Russell Wilson, taking shots down the field. But I will say this, we need to pump our Jets, no pun intended, a little bit on whether or not he is a viable option, because the Jets secondary was decimated with injuries coming into the game and a plethora of even more injuries throughout the game. I don't even know who they were putting back there in the second half of that game. So, I mean, if Russell Wilson wasn't able to succeed throwing against third and fourth stringers, then, I mean, it would have been a clear indication that he was done as well. So at least he was able to prove that he still has a little bit of a possibility here, but definitely rusty in the beginning, definitely missing some throws, kind of started to overcome that in the second half. But I'll just say, in my opinion, the jury is still out on him.
I think it is, but at the same time, I'm going to stick to my guns saying I think the offense has a higher ceiling with him than it does with Justin Fields. Because Justin Fields, I think, still at this point is either just protecting the ball or he's got his legs, and that's about it. Like, I think there's a little bit more you can do with Russell Wilson, and I think the production out of George Pickens alone kind of proved that.
Correct. There was a clear difference in last night's game in the red zone. But I do think that Russell Wilson, again, this guy hasn't played in almost a year.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I think that kind of can come around. It's understandable if there's a little bit of rust. All I'm saying is don't just expect that, he's a savior. Now, that doesn't mean if you're in a 2 QB league, you got to go out and get him if he's out there on waivers. He's definitely a very possible viable option.
We'll get to waivers in a second. I just wanted to touch on 2 really quick fan questions here.
Yeah.
Really quick. Do you guys have any information on the Puka injury? Is he coming back soon? It was announced that he is not practicing this week, so do not expect him back in week 8. But we'll look forward week 9, week 10, and see if we have any updates post that.
Yeah, they kind of said all along week 10. And so that's kind of, I have Puka in a couple of my leagues, and that's kind of what I've just been expecting is week 10. And again, that's speculative. There's still no guarantee that he is coming back that soon. It could be later than that.
Originally slated 5 to 7 weeks, but I think it's definitely going past the 7 weeks.
I agree.
So, and then the last one, because I just love this question, we don't have to spend a ton of time on it. Is Brock Purdy cooked? I don't know if Brock Purdy was ever good to start with.
No, Brock Purdy's not cooked. Brock Purdy is exactly who Brock Purdy is. I think he is a very smart quarterback who can make reads and understands what to do with the football and is in an offense that is fantastic for him. And I'm not saying that he couldn't go anywhere else and have similar success, but he needs to be in an offense like Shanahan's, McVay's, whatnot. He is not an athletic freak that's going to make things happen on his own. But I do believe Kyle Shanahan will still be able to take players that he has on that team and draw up plays where Brock Purdy will have success.
And it's the most friendly quarterback offense in the league. McVay's is probably second. And if you need any kind of, thing to back that up, look at Jimmy Garoppolo year over year between going from San Francisco to going to Las Vegas. That's all I have to say about that. I'm not saying Purdy's bad. I'm just saying Purdy's not as good as a lot of the media puts him out to be. He is just very good for that system. And there's nothing wrong with that. Want to hit some waivers, Marcus?
Sure. There's not a lot of them, but yes.
All right, cool. I was going to hit a button, but we're just going to fake it and say we did. And we're going to go.
It's waiver time. Waiver time. There we go.
I'm going to record that and put it on the actual button now. I appreciate that. You mentioned Russell Wilson. I think if you're looking for a quarterback that can fill some bye weeks, play by matchup, Russell Wilson's somebody you definitely have to take a look at and see if he keeps knocking the rust off.
Yeah.
And then the second person I have on our list is somebody who we mentioned last week as he's nearing his return. Keep an eye on Tua, stash him, see what you have to look forward to.
Yeah. I think it's real simple. There is 2 names on this list. If you're in a 2 QB league, which usually that's the people that are really looking to hammer waivers for quarterbacks. So obviously you have Russell Wilson, possibly Tua, like you said, if somebody happened to drop him, not keep him. And then the other one is Jameis Winston, who does look to be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. If you're in a 2 QB league, let's face it, if you're a starting quarterback, you're a viable option. If you're in a 1 quarterback league, I'm still amazed. There are big name quarterbacks that are still out there. As a matter of fact, in one of my leagues, Jared Goff was available. So, pay attention to, and this is very important all the way through, but pay attention to who people drop, especially with bye weeks, because if you have the ability, you may be able to, if you kind of play it out right, you might be able to pick that player up, later on in the week, once they clear that like kind of first round of waivers, in order to, you won't be able to start them that week, but it might be a better option for you moving forward. So pay attention there. But yeah, it's waivers are going to start getting tight.
They are, for sure. Quick quarterback question. Sam Darnold or Caleb Williams? Caleb Williams can't decide which quarterback to roll with for the rest of the season. I would probably advise in this case holding both playing matchups. If I had to pick one, I'd go Caleb Williams. What do you think?
I think I agree with you in terms of the matchups. I think Caleb Williams is probably your safer, if you had to only keep one. I think I would go Caleb Williams because I think Caleb Williams is going to be, regardless week after week, kind of involve more of the shootout, where I think that defense in Minnesota is so fantastic that if the Vikings play a weaker opponent, you're not going to get the bigger numbers. So you're going to want to target the shootouts for Minnesota, like we saw here with Detroit. But I do think against weaker opponents that Minnesota is just going to lock it down. You're probably going to see a lot of running.
Like that advice there a lot. Wide receivers, we hinted at it earlier. Everybody that plays wide receiver in San Francisco.
Yeah, pay attention.
Normally, more specifically, I'm liking Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of hoping to see a little bit more out of Pearsall this week. Again, first game back after being shot. So
first game of his career also. Let's just
correct.
Fly over that. Like, this man hasn't seen NFL snaps yet.
No knock on him, but yeah, I mean, that could be a big pickup there. I really, whoever it is, like you really have to pay attention to San Francisco this week and see who's playing, who's not playing. And again, think about that. I've seen it happen a lot. Pay attention for players who, like Juwan Jennings, case in point, he might not play this week, but he is going to be back. And when that happens, like I wouldn't necessarily be dropping all my fab on Ricky Pearsall, because there's no guarantee that Ricky Pearsall is going to be that, third option or fourth option there. So, think about what you're doing there. You don't want to drop a ton of your free agency budget, if it's only going to be a 1 week rental.
Exactly. And I think it's been proven that once he is back, especially with Ayuk out for the season, regardless of what happens with Debo long-term, Juwan Jennings has a role in this offense.
Absolutely.
He's talented. Yep. Shanahan likes him. He knows how to scheme him open. So Juwan Jennings is the person that I would dump a lot more fab onto rather than Ricky Pearsall. Pearsall could be a 1 week fill. Juwan Jennings can end up being a starting wide receiver for you or starting flex for you long term.
Here's another thing too. And again, when we do this, it's things that like I would look at doing. So I'm tipping my hand here, but Juwan Jennings, it might be the best thing in the world if he's out this week, because you might be able to get him for next to nothing. And he, like, keep in mind, Ayuk is gone for the year. So once he's healthy after that bye, I will take him in that offense. I mean, that's a good plug and play player there, so you might be able to get him as a, free or for a couple bucks, as opposed to if he's playing this week and Debo's possibly out now that he's been hospitalized. Now that bid's going to go through the roof.
Exactly. And people might still own him from the last couple of weeks when they were playing him with the other injuries, but there's a lot of leagues that people dropped him because it was like, oh, you can Debo back. It was fun while it lasted. It's come back around. Keep an eye on your waiver wires and see. The other person I have on here, and I guess you can argue for a couple of different Green Bay wide receivers if you think whoever's going to break out. Good matchup for Green Bay this week, and Romeo Doubs is my favorite of the group.
It's sad because the reality of it is I like the Green Bay wide receivers. I really do. The problem is I would love the Green Bay wide receivers if one of them was done for the year.
Just one
It's
even. Yeah.
just one. Yeah. All you need,
Mhm.
it's just one too many. No, I like Dobbs. We've said over and over again, especially if you play in a PPR league, Dobbs has a role there. He will get he'll get the individual catches. Now, whether or not he gets the touchdowns, but you could do worse. Absolutely could do worse.
I guess we have to keep moving here because we're getting close on time.
Yeah.
Running backs here. 3 on our list. I know you added a couple of these, so I'll let you talk a little
Yes.
deeper. Alexander Madison, Ray Davis, and Kendre Miller. I have Madison
Yeah.
on here because he's broken 10 points 3 straight weeks. He did it again this week with Zamir White back in the lineup, so he's at least worth owning if he's still sitting out there, and you could potentially flex him if you're desperate with a bye week or an injury, which we're all desperate with injuries, let's be honest.
Madison is RB1 in Las Vegas. I'm not going to say White won't get touches, but he should be the running back that's owned there. So if he is out there, yes, he is absolutely somebody I would target. Yeah, just simple as that. Zamir White is a non-factor at this point unless something dramatically changes. He's had the opportunity, hasn't proved it.
So why do you like Davis and Miller?
I think Ray Davis has shown he got an opportunity with Cook getting injured, but I think Ray Davis is going to continue to carve a role for himself. You saw it when he gets the ball, he has that breakaway hit. I think it's a great compliment. And I think really by the end of the year, it's going to be a 1-2 punch with him and Cook. Not to mention it's an incredible handcuff because if something does happen to Cook long-term, Davis's role becomes that much better. Kendre Miller, if you have room on your bench, or if you are a Alvin Kamara owner, you need to own Kendre Miller. Alvin Kamara, there are rumors coming out of New Orleans right now that Kamara does not want to be part of a rebuild. Whether or not he gets moved or not, I don't know. But if he does get moved, Kendre Miller becomes an RB1.
Yeah.
Just by workload alone. So, I mean, that's a definite stash player there and a total handcuff for Kamara. But yeah, absolutely keep your eyes on him. Pay attention to the rumblings out there. If it seems that they're starting to talk about moving Kamara, you got to get him on your roster, especially if you're a Kamara owner.
I like it. That's something that not a lot of people are talking about, and I haven't seen a lot of places. So that's why we listen to Marcus and the Couch Chance podcast. But tight ends, obviously, no one super exciting because it's the tight end position. 2 people that I would not mind throwing in my lineup because we hope for volume. Zach Ertz, Hunter Henry. Any gaffes against that?
Hunter Henry's going to give you fits. He's unfortunately just very volatile. There's going to be weeks he does great things. There's going to be weeks that he disappears. But, tight end has become such a wasteland. You brought up David Njoku earlier. In the event that somebody dropped him because he was injured at the beginning of the year and then was doing nothing, absolutely, he is somebody that you need to pay attention to as well. And Zach Ertz, I do like him, as a weekly option. He is a better play if Jaden Daniels does not start. Mariota
with Daniels.
Correct. But you could tell Mariota kind of leaned on him a little bit and definitely had a chemistry with him right away. So I like Zach Ertz. I really, really like Zach Ertz, especially this week against Chicago. If Mariota is starting, if not, that's more of a desperation play with tight end. But let's face it, that's kind of what we're seeing.
I'm waiting for Taysom Hill to get back, if we're being honest, but that's just me. Defense streams for the week. Chiefs defense is right around 50% owned. They play the Raiders. Obviously, that's a no-brainer right there. And then a team that has a traditionally very good defense, but they've been dropped in a lot of places because they're giving up a lot of points currently. The Baltimore Ravens against the Cleveland Browns. That is a gold mine of a matchup. And they're like 40% owned right now in a lot of leagues. I don't mind adding them and kind of holding on and seeing if they can bring that points per game down a little bit because they have everything you would need to be a start every week defense down the stretch.
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely teams that are out there that could become a start every week. And if you're doing the defensive streams, it doesn't take us to tell you what to do here. Pay attention to the teams that are floundering. whether it's New England, whoever New England plays, that's a great one to go after because
Yes.
their offensive line is by far the worst offensive line I think I've ever seen in the NFL. And that's saying a lot because Washington's had a lot of them. But the Raiders, the Browns, New Orleans until Carr comes back. Carolina just looked horrible this past week. So yeah, you just have to kind of use common sense with it. Pay attention to quarterbacks that might not go, teams that are depleted by injuries. But yeah, the Chiefs and Ravens this week, by far, those are two of the better ones to go after.
This is the point of the show where I just told you had one question to ask me before we moved on to our Monday night preview.
It is. So not the question to ask you, but I was asked this question today and I was like, that's actually a pretty interesting one. George, if you had to say right now, because we kind of hinted at this, we kind of have, there isn't really this like powerhouse top of the conference in either side. So who are your top 5 teams in each conference right now?
Top 5 teams in each conference right now. So I did peek and kind of like get a little bit of a head start on this one. So it was very hard to put together. I'll start with the NFC because I almost feel like it's easier.
All right.
Lions, Vikings, and Packers are all in my top 5, which is funny because they're in the same division.
Wow. Okay.
And then I'm putting Washington in my top 5 because they're just playing out of their mind right now. And then that's when it gets tough because number 5, like I think some of the contenders that are in there, you can argue Tampa Bay, but they've been kind of wishy-washy. You can argue Philadelphia, they've been wishy-washy. Seattle, the same way. The common sense without looking at records and stuff would tell you San Francisco, but they are really struggling and dealing with the injury bug. As of now, I'm going to lean not confidently Seattle with honorable mentions to Philly and Tampa Bay.
Okay. Not bad. I would agree with you with all except for, and you'll be happy with this, I'm actually going to go Philadelphia.
Okay.
I do think, and I think this past week kind of showed me why. I would not have said that except for this past week. They came out of their bye. The defense finally looked like the defense it could be.
And for both weeks out of their bye, actually, because they've gotten more sacks in those 2 weeks than points allowed on defense.
Correct. So I think if they start to figure out the offense a little bit and start passing it more, they have Barkley. The only thing I'll caution with them in regards to their offense is they have to be careful not to run Barkley into the ground. And I think Philly could be a really dangerous team. So, but no, I agree with you with the other 4. I would just differ with Seattle and Philly. So
that's a very tough spot there.
No,
AFC,
I agree with you.
You have to put Kansas City up there. And I've also got Houston in there. And despite my gas with Buffalo, I've got Buffalo in there. So that's 3. Baltimore's in there as well. Despite them not leading their division, I'd put them above Pittsburgh. I really don't want to put Pittsburgh in the top 5 because I feel like they're kind of a ticking time bomb. The reason that I'm going to is their defense.
Okay.
I think their defense is going to keep them in every game, and their offense is just going to have to play ball control. And like I said, I think putting Russell Wilson in there gives them a little bit of a boost. But I hate that pick even more than I hated Seattle. And I hated Seattle putting them in the top 5. I hate putting Pittsburgh there even more. So
I agree with you. I think Pittsburgh has to be in there until they prove us otherwise. But I will say there's a close number 6, and that's the LA Chargers. I do like what they're doing there. I lean to Pittsburgh more so because of what they've done so far, but also the personnel that's there. I think the Chargers are a year or 2 away from being a really tough team in that AFC West.
They're well coached now, which says a lot. They're leaning on the run game, which they know has to be their strength, and they're just letting the pass game complement. I think it's working for them. Maybe if they keep playing well for another week or 2, they're definitely up in that spot.
Could be. They beat the Chiefs.
That's a very tough one. If they beat
Can I speak this into existence? If the Chargers beat the Chiefs, when the Chargers beat the Chiefs.
There you
go. When the Chargers beat the Chiefs.
Maybe when the Chargers beat the Cardinals. I don't know about that. Let's look at Monday night. If you're listening on podcast platform, after the day after, this is where you can drop off. Thank you for listening. We really appreciate you tuning in. or you can just stay listening in and hear Marcus and I completely flop guessing these games. But good ones coming up here. The doubleheader starts at 8:00 with Ravens at Buccaneers. This feels like, just by team name, a game the Ravens should just walk away with. But Tampa Bay's been a very tough opponent this year.
No, I agree. And I think for this game, I don't know if inactives are up yet, but there was no, for either of these games, there's no one that we were really hinging on or waiting on. We were
Exactly.
told Mike Evans was going to play. In the later game, which we'll get to in a second, we know that Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to play. So
Yep.
I think those are
were
the two big ones. This is one of those that, I'll be honest, everyone is expecting to be this crazy offensive, firepower, fireworks game. And my gut is telling me that this is not that. I think for some reason it's going to be low scoring. I really do. I could see this being like a 20 to like 24 game. And going the under, I think, we have it up here as 50. I don't know if that's changed at all, but
that was as of about 5:00 today. So probably
yeah.
hasn't moved much if it has.
Yeah.
I think that's a good.
I would go the under.
Yeah, a lot of people are thinking that we're just struggling here. A lot of people are thinking that the two high-powered offenses are going to step up. But I honestly, if you look at it, both Baltimore and Tampa Bay are led by solid defenses, but we just haven't quite seen it yet. So this could be where it comes out.
Well, and I think the other aspect of it too is you've seen that the Bucks can throw the ball around.
Mm-hmm.
They have a plethora of really good wide receivers, two great ones, Godwin and Evans, but they have good depth there too.
Sterling Shepard's no one to sneeze at. Exactly.
No. And so the thing of it is okay, well, the Ravens secondary hasn't been fantastic. So, okay, what do we do in order to win this game? Well, we do what the Ravens do best, which is methodically move the ball down the field. I think you're going to see Derrick Henry run the ball a ton tonight. And I think they're going to try and slow the pace down. Now, whether or not the Bucks try and do that, I don't think that that's their strong suit against this defense, but I think Ravens try and control the ball. It's on the road. I think they try and slow down the Bucks offense. And like I said, I don't think it's going to be a boring game. I just don't think you're going to see a 40 to 35 point game. And, look, if I'm wrong, then so be it. And we get a bunch of fantasy points.
Exactly. But I think the game where I really need the most fantasy points, which sounds funny, I have more players in this game. The late game starting at a little after 9:00 East, Chargers at Cardinals. The over-under on this one's actually lower at 44, probably partly because of the Chargers and their ball control offense. The Cardinals have all of that explosion to go out there and, put the ball in the air, but they obviously lean on James Conner too. I'm going to ask a question for Bree here while we're here. Who has the better night, J.K. Dobbins or James Conner?
Are we waiting for Bree to answer, or do you want my opinion first?
No, your opinion. No. She's in a matchup where she needs Conner to outscore Dobbins by 3 points to win in a fantasy matchup. So.
Okay. Well, I'm going to say Dobbins, and only because I need a stat line that's like 13 for 150 and 3 touchdowns for McBride. I'm not winning. I'm not winning my matchup. It's the punt version of it. I need a career game out of Trey McBride in order to even have a chance to win. Now, I do think it'll be Dobbins, strictly because Dobbins is really the Chargers offense, where I think Conner, although he's a great running back and could very well beat him out, but you also have McBride, you also have Harrison Jr., you have Kyler Murray. So I think there's just a lot of other options, a lot of other pathways for the Cardinals to score points, where for the Chargers, I really think I'm not saying that other people can't score points, but it's J.K. Dobbins. That's plan A, that's plan B, and plan C. And then maybe in D is when they vary to somebody else.
Quentin Johnston, most likely, but it's not really pretty.
Yeah. Or Laddie.
Laddie McConkey.
Laddie McConkey.
I can't tell if that was very Irish or very Shrek, but that might be me showing my age. I don't know.
That's both.
Yeah, that's pretty similar. Let's be honest.
And I do think I
Go
do
ahead.
think that's another game I expect them to go under, but I would definitely take Arizona on the points. It's basically a pickup game, a pick'em game there, and I would take the Cardinals. I think they win that game.
Yeah, Arizona only underdogs by a singular point, so that loss by one's a push. That's the only difference there. Anything else you want to
Yeah.
add in before we get out of here?
Let's just hope that there's no more injuries tonight. Let's get through the rest of this week with no major injuries, because you have a lot of very viable fantasy people playing yet tonight. Here we go again with 2 games. NFL. I'm still not sure why they're doing that on Monday night, but we got 2 more games to watch, and then I guess if I remember correctly, I guess I'm going to see you again on Thursday, right?
Yes, sir. We'll see you again
All
on
right.
Thursday. And we got a Thursday night game, no London game next week, and only a singular Monday night game. So we're gonna have a full Sunday slate to try to hit next week. So we'll see how
Sounds
that
good. No
goes.
bye weeks too.
No bye week too. We're gonna have a fun with fantasy. Bye week. Figure that out on Thursday. Thank you all for tuning in to this little bit of a marathon of a show. A lot to talk about today. But make sure you join us again Thursday, 6:30. We'll go live again. You can ask your questions and feel free to drop your questions in our DMs in the meantime. For Marcus, I'm George, and we'll see you all later this week.